All right, good morning. I got the door open back there. They're bringing all of our food in, so you might feel the chill a little bit. But I don't want any complaints about the thermostat. Thermostat's doing its job. I get lots of comments about thermostats lately. So welcome. Thank you for being here this morning. Today, if you were here last week, you saw that today, and by the way, thank you, Clint, for bringing your boys. I know this is intentional, because today we're going to talk about do not let your children do anything that will make you dislike them. So we have all the operaments here to make sure we get this lesson down. So we're on Rule 5. Rachel hasn't been in this class because she's teaching, and every week she asks me, are you doing the cat one yet? Are you doing the cat one yet? And I'm like, no, that's literally the last one we're doing. Pet a cat on the street when you encounter it. Okay. Today, I do want to set some ground rules. I was thinking a lot about this because of this topic. And so, a couple things that I want to go over before we get into the discussion, okay? First, I want to recognize that this is a very heavy topic for many parents. Some of this stuff isn't easy, and I want to recognize it up front. This verse is the first one that comes to mind for many of us. And then there's also 1 Timothy when we're talking about becoming an overseer. The weight of raising children is heavy. And there are some who have children who were raised in every possible good way you could even think of, but still choose in their adulthood not to follow. So I want us to all recognize that up front because it's a very, very difficult topic for some because these scriptures, what could they make someone feel like?
They did something wrong.
They did something wrong. It's a very real feeling. And it's hard. But we're going to talk about it today, but I want this to be, number one, our first ground rule. So, these scriptures sound very definitive, so black and white, and so easy. You just do the thing, and they'll just turn out perfect, just like you are, right? That was sarcastic. Second ground rule. When we talk about parenting, there are always exceptions. We're going to talk about a lot of things today, but when we're talking about parents who are imperfect, and we have children who are all different, let's set this ground rule right now that there's going to be exceptions to all the rules. So we can go, children come in all forms and temperaments, abilities, intellect, etc. And we all know this. The goal, this is just me filtering, so the goal of parenting is not to find the perfect formula that will work on all children. The goal is to aim them in the right direction. Because there will always be whataboutisms. We all know children, whether they're ours or someone else's, that won't fit the so-called mold for how you should parent them. Example is we might talk today about the ideal is to have the parents talking with one another, parenting together, and then you're going to say, well, what about the single mom? Yes, that they exist, and we need to recognize that. But we can't throw away what we know to be right and true because of a whataboutism. Does that make sense? We must at least try, because the only alternative is if there's always an exception, then we say, well, then we can't have any rules. We can't have any direction. We can't have any aim, and that's just not accurate. So an example of this would be if I were to say to you, men are stronger than women. And you're going to say, what about my aunt who works out every day? She's way stronger than my grandpa who can barely lift 5 pounds. That's a woman who's stronger than a man. So your statement that men are stronger than women is inaccurate. And so when we talk about this, I need you to understand when we read this or when we go through this content that Jordan Peterson has put together, a lot of it is based on his multiple decades of dealing with people, and so he's doing it at the aggregate. He's not doing individual circumstances. He's doing it at the aggregate. So, any comments or questions before we get into some of the topic? Some of those thoughts.
What about the differing in culture? Because I know 20 years ago, or a little more than 20 years ago, you could actually tell a child they need to do this, they need to do that, and their opinion on it didn't matter. And today, more children rule the household than the parents do.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're raising a whataboutism. I think you're just calling out that culture has changed over time, and it will continue to change over time. So what we're looking at is not what does culture teach, but what does the Bible teach? What is right? What is true? Because if we just let culture take over and we just forget about it, culture will win.
Well, I was thinking more it was easier back when you could actually discipline your children, and not beat them, but discipline them.
Yeah.
And today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think every culture bears its own challenge. I think every culture bears its own challenge. All right, so let's get into some of the content of the book. If you haven't been here in a while, I'm going to go through some of what I'm going to try my best to represent what his argument is and give it a fair shot. Call out anything that maybe I disagree with, call out things I agree with, and then we're going to get into the scripture and we're going to measure it against it. So these are just going to be summary points from this chapter. First of all, the focus of this chapter, when he's doing this, he's primarily talking about parents of young children. He does not address parents of adult children. He's talking literally from birth almost to like the adolescence age, 8 or 9 or 10. He's not even really talking a whole lot in this chapter about teenagers. He does a lot of spends a lot of time talking about the development of the brain of a child and how you get to like even at age 2, what are they trying to do? What are they comprehending at age 4, at age 6 and beyond? And because those are the critical years in what he's talking about. So when you hear some of these things, he's primarily focused on young children. So he makes statements similar to this. This is a summary of a statement. But if you, the person who loves them most, your children, knows them best, and is most inclined to forgive, end up disliking or resenting your child due to their repeated behavior, then other people, peers and teachers, employers, strangers, or society at large, will dislike them even more intensely and with far less patience or mercy. So his point is, if your child is bothering you, it's only that much worse for everyone else around you, because you're the one that's supposed to love them the most. Children are not born socially competent. They are born wild, exploratory, and tyrannical. We're going to get to that in a little bit. In their own impulse, curious but selfish, aggressive and boundary testing. Without guidance, these impulses lead to antisocial, irritating, or outright harmful actions. He dismisses the claim that there are no bad children, only bad parents. Has anybody heard that before? No such thing as a bad child, there's only bad parents. He completely dismisses that concept. Because the idea that if children were left to figure out their social interactions without the guidance of parents, that they would all of a sudden become little angels in perfect social harmony with others is absurd. They need parents. It's quite the opposite, and we've seen this in societies. And that isn't to say that there aren't bad parents. There are plenty, but children need parents, and they especially need good parents. The primary duty of parents is to socialize their children, to make them desirable and likable to others so that they can form friendships, succeed in groups, and thrive in the world. Failing to correct bad behavior doesn't produce free-spirited or authentic child, which we've heard that, haven't we? Let your child be their authentic selves. Yeah, at age 4. That's how you end up with children getting parts of their body cut off when they're 13 because of that kind of mentality. Instead, it produces a child who is rejected, isolated, lonely, and miserable, and who may grow into an adult that no one wants to be around. Parents who avoid discipline out of misplaced kindness, empathy, fear of conflict, or romantic notions that children are innately perfect are actually cruel in the long run. They doom their child to social failure because society will enforce rules harshly and with rejection, exclusion, and punishment. Children constantly test limits to discover where the boundaries of accepted behavior lie. A natural and necessary process. Think terrible twos. Why do we call them the terrible twos? What's happening? Let's just have a conversation. What's happening?
Starting to test boundaries, finding themselves.
They start telling us no.
What happens at age 2? What's the difference between age 1 and age 2 and age 3 and age 4? What's happening at 2?
They're walking fast.
Okay. They become mobile, which is one way that they can express their ability to set or to explore boundaries, if you will, right? What else do they do? Verbally, they start talking. At age 2, there is a level, it's not all there yet, don't hear me say that, there is a level of comprehension that's starting to set in. They understand what no means. At least they're starting to. Up until that time, there is nothing. Like they're well deserving in when they cry, they need attention. There's nothing there. But when you start to hit age 2, they start to test the boundaries. And so what he's calling out here is this is part of every child's experience, and it ought to be. It's necessary. We have to test our boundaries. So that's all he's saying here. Clear, consistent, minimal rules and immediate proportional consequences teach them how to navigate human society. The goal is a child who is socially desirable by age 4 to 5, playful, cooperative, polite, resilient, and not a tyrant or a victim. He makes this point, which was really an interesting thing for me, and I can speak to this because this is for sure Rachel and I. And she admitted it. I talked to her about it last night. She admitted it. Okay, so mothers, think of your role as a mother. And he calls this out in this chapter. What is your role as a mother? You're the one that cares for. You're responsible for that infant, and you've seen them grow up. When you see them at 3, 4, 5 years old, your instinct is to do what with them? Help protect them. You're their first line of defense. You are there to protect them, nurture them. Literally, like physically and spiritually, like you are the one that they run to whenever they need somebody, right? That's what a mother does. So you're more concerned about the child in his present state. The current safety and security of the child is prime. Mothers are less likely to allow exploration that may result in harm or failure. True? All right. Now, and once again, remember, there's always whataboutisms. You're going to find people that are in different roles, but this is generally true. What are fathers? Fathers are more concerned about the child in his future state. The future potential and success of the child is prime. So what's the child thinking about? I mean, what's the father thinking about?
The man he's going to be, or the woman that she's going to be.
What is their potential?
Is he ever going to leave?
Is he ever going to leave? That's right. Carson, did you hear that? He was back there. Men, fathers, I should say, are willing to allow for an appropriate level of pain and failure now as a way to prepare him for the future. Would you all find that true? Is there anybody that says that's not true? So my story is, I remember when we lived out on acreage out in Nolensville. Carson will remember this. Kayla came home. They were obviously much younger. This was many years ago. Kayla came home, and the sheriff had been to her school. And the sheriff came and said, did you guys know that when you ride your bike, you have to wear a helmet? And if we catch you without a helmet, your parents can get a ticket. So she came home, and remember, we live on acreage. We live in the middle of nowhere. We were in a cul-de-sac, and we did not have helmets for our kids and their bikes. And Kayla came home, and she was very upset about this. Dad, don't you love us? I kid you not, it's exactly what she said to me. Don't you love us? Why didn't you get helmets for us? We need to wear helmets. The sheriff told us you have to have helmets. And I just said, you don't need a helmet. There's no reason you need a helmet out here. You're going 5, 10 miles an hour on your bike. There's no cars around. There's no reason for you to wear a helmet. Also, I didn't wear a helmet, and I'm just fine, I think. So, Rachel, let's just get them helmets. What if they fall? There's rocks on the driveway. They could fall and hurt their head. What were we playing out there? And this is before I read all this. What were we playing out there? I know it's silly, but I mean, we all see our helmets are really necessary, guys. I mean, come on. Maybe on if you're racing, that's one thing, or if you're going down a big mountain, maybe. But we were playing that out in real life. I was, Carson can tell you this too. When we lived on this acreage, I was like, go into the woods. Just go. And come back when you want to come back. And Rachel would be like, but he's only 3 or 4, whatever he was. Well, he wasn't 3 or 4. He was older than that. But she was very much like, but what if something happens while he's up in the woods? And I'm like, and then something will happen. And what are we going to do about it? And so it's very much a reality. And I think all of you can relate to this because this is how our brains are wired. It's how we're meant to be. It should be this way. We need someone that's currently concerned about their safety, but we also need someone that's willing to look to the future and challenge them in ways that the other isn't. So he comes out of this chapter with 5 principles. The first one is limit the rules. And I'm doing this a disservice a little bit because I'm going to go through them really fast, but each of these is like long and drawn out when he talks about them. So just understand that I'm just giving you a summary here. But don't overwhelm them with thousands of nitpicks. Focus on what truly matters, just as God gave us clear commands. I've seen chore lists of 4-year-olds that are like this long. And that's kind of what he talks about. Like, does a child 4 years old need a list of 15 things that they have to do every day? He said, limit it. Give them something specific to focus on. How many commandments did the people of Israel get? 10. 10 commandments. That was it. Just as an example. I'm just kind of calling that out. Number 2, use the minimum necessary force. A calm word, consequence first, only escalate when needed, and never in anger. With my kids, Sophia, all it takes for her was a harsh look, and she would absolutely melt. And frankly, kind of to this day, it's almost the same way. We never had to spank Sophia, never once. We did a little with Carson and a little with Kayla, but never once with Sophia, and that's just because her temperament was different. She didn't require it. It was literally a look, and she would just start, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and and that's just how she was. So they're all different, and so what he's saying here is only escalate to where you need to escalate depending on the child. Their temperament matters. Be precise. Target the specific behavior and not the child's worth. This is about what you did. This is discipline for what you did, not who you are. Make consequences immediate. You can't delay things. You delay them. Remember, he talks about this. 30 minutes for a 2-year-old is like 5 years for us as adults. They don't have a time frame that we have. You can't get them to sit for 30 minutes for anything. So that's what he's talking about. It's got to be immediate so that they understand that there's a connection between the time of discipline to consequence. And pair the discipline with encouragement. Reward good, just as God disciplines those he loves in Hebrews 12:6. Okay, so those are the 5 principles that he uses in the book. A couple of quotes, and then we're going to have about 20 minutes left to get into all the scripture. These are just things that I pulled out that I felt would connect with you guys, that you would see and resonate with. He says, modern parents are simply paralyzed by the fear that they will no longer be liked or even loved by their children if they chastise them for any reason. They want their children's friendship above all and are willing to sacrifice respect to get it. This is not good. A child will have many friends, but only 2 parents, if that. And parents are more, not less, than friends. Parents are the arbiters of society. They teach children how to behave so that other people will be able to interact meaningfully and productively with them. Productively. Gosh, I'm struggling. Another quote from the book, direct from the book. It is an act of responsibility to discipline a child. It is not anger at misbehavior. It is not revenge for misdeed. It is instead a careful combination of mercy and long-term judgment. Proper discipline requires effort, indeed. It is virtually synonymous with effort. It is difficult to pay careful attention to children. It is difficult to figure out what is wrong and what is right and why. He's calling out, it's difficult to understand the best way to discipline your child and when they need it. It's difficult to formulate just and compassionate strategies of discipline to negotiate their application with others deeply involved in the child's care. Okay? Just a couple more and then we're done. And he continues, how then should children be disciplined? This is a very difficult question. Because children and parents differ vastly in their temperaments, some children are agreeable. They deeply want to please, but pay for that which with a tendency to be conflict averse and dependent. Others are tougher minded and more independent. Those kids want to do what they want, when they want, all the time. They can be challenging, non-compliant, and stubborn. Some children are desperate for rules and structure and are content even in rigid environments. All of those of you that have kids, you know this to be true. Clint.
When I started preaching, one of the guys that would eventually become an elder at the congregation where I preached at, he had 5 kids, and all 5 turned out to be faithful. So I asked him what the secret was, and he had like a wooden spoon or something like that. And he's like, you got it, you have to be the authority, because their conception of you is what they're going to conceive of God later on, so you have to firmly establish authority. You're the authority figure, not your kids. So we had a fun time with this. I had a nice padded ping pong paddle, which got regular use. And even though all 3 of the boys have very different temperaments, they all got a taste of the smiling ping pong paddle.
Just a ping pong paddle? That doesn't seem strong enough for...
No,
It was
I got spanked with one, they're strong.
Oh, they're strong enough? Okay.
I did have
Ours had a pink eagle on it. I
ours
can
had
still
a
remember.
smiley face. It didn't last very long. Got the trash and that.
So we had one, me growing up with my parents, we had one for all of us. I'm one of 6 kids, and my brother used to put tick marks on it every time he got it. And so it became like, it was like one of those measuring sticks, you know, that when people, and I wrote out at one time the paddle and I spelled it wrong. And yeah, but it was the paddle, and it was what we used when I was growing up. So
Our ping pong paddle broke on side one time, and I was so excited, and then Mom upgraded to a wooden spoon. I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, we all have fun memories of discipline. And you know what's interesting about that as an adult? It's very rare. Now, when we get into abuse, it's a very different situation. I'm not talking about abuse. Please hear that. But those of us who were spanked in an appropriate way can look back on that and go, I probably deserved it. I needed it. And it's probably good that it happened. As long as it's done in an appropriate and loving way, you know, not an intent for any kind of anger or abuse. So, Steve?
Back in my day, when my grandmother had it hanging in the kitchen, it was called a fanny whack. And it had rules, and it had the name across it, and it was hanging on the little hook.
So, we have a board of education.
So, good question. I like this transition because I think, hold on. Oh, yeah, we are going to lead into it because you're probably wondering, well, where does he come down on physical discipline? Well, this is a quote from his book. And this is only like a small portion of a large section of the same kind of content. To hold to the no excuse for physical punishment theory is also to assume that the word no can be effectively uttered to another person in the absence of a threat of punishment. Okay, I'll stop right there. He's going to get into explaining that more, but what he's saying is, what does the word no mean if it doesn't have consequences that can follow it? So he continues, a woman can say no to a powerful narcissistic man only because she has social norms. The law and the state are backing her up. A parent can only say no to a child who wants a third piece of cake because he or she is larger, stronger, and more capable than the child. What no means in the final analysis is always, if you continue to do that, something you do not like will happen to you. Otherwise, it means nothing. This is a particularly bad lesson. Okay, let's get into the scriptures on parenting. Any thoughts really quick before we get into this? Jeff?
Yeah, I'm thinking of there's a medical condition, I looked up a while ago in class, it affects 1 in 125 million people. So it's, what about is it doesn't really apply. But there's a medical condition where people literally can't feel pain. And they can't hardly live because they have no boundaries. And they have to have people help them because they simply they can't sense any bad consequences. So you wouldn't want that.
Yep.
They need to have boundaries.
So I did a lesson on this, I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, and I still remember the girl's name, and you can pull it up on your phone to this day. Her name was Gabby Gringus. At that time, Gabby was a little girl, adolescence, I don't know exactly, maybe 7 or 8 or 9 when they did the story on her. And I did a whole class on this because it was one of those light bulb moments for me when I was much younger that pain is actually a gift. And because she did not have, Jeff, she did not have any pain sensory, so what did she do? She had chewed her tongue up. She had lost all of her teeth because she had no consequence to what pain was supposed to feel like. She gouged her eyes out. She had lost vision in one of her eyes. She had to wear goggles so they would protect her from herself. She had multiple burns all over herself because you would not believe how hard it is to keep a child away from things when they don't have a sense of pain. And so the lesson I did was how pain is a gift from God. And I used Gabby Gringus and so you're exactly right. So. Okay. Number 1. Children are a heritage and a blessing from God. So we go to Psalm 127, 3-5. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb a reward. Like arrows in the hand of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. He shall not be put to shame when he speaks with his enemies in the gate. And I think this is just a beautiful way to understand what children mean to God. I don't know how else to say it. And when we as Christians have children, it's that much more of a blessing. Psalm 128:3. Yeah.
This is actually countercultural now, because there's a huge movement, an anti-marriage movement, an anti-children movement, where people are celebrating
Yep.
not getting married, not having kids,
Yep.
because of the responsibilities that come along with these relationships.
Yeah, it's a piggyback to the cultural thing of you don't need to get married until you're late in your 30s. You have to have a career established, don't you know, before you can really, have children. And furthermore, the other thing that you should do is probably go have your eggs frozen so that they're still fresh when you're ready to have children, which is another movement, which we're not going to get into that today, but what you're getting at is the age of marriage today used to be, in the early 1900s, it was 18, 20 years old. Now it's much, much later than that when people are starting to get married. And yeah, it is very countercultural. Psalm 128:3, your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like an olive shoots around your table. So children are a heritage and a blessing from God. Proverbs 17:6, grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of children is their fathers. There was a preacher once, not here, that talked a lot about, I will know my success as a father if my grandchildren become followers of Christ. And there's something to that, because then you've done something right if your grandchildren are there. It's enough for your children, but if you grandchildren, then you've really made it, is the way that he looked at life. So just a thought, grandchildren as well. Number 2, parental responsibility, teaching faith and godly living. Deuteronomy 6:6-9 says, and these words I command you today that shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So when are you supposed to teach these words to your children? Always and everywhere. Genesis 18:19, for I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. So teaching faith and godly living is a parental responsibility. It's what we must do. Discipline, correction, and wisdom. I only did a few verses on this. There's a whole bunch more than I'm going to have listed for us today. Proverbs 13:24, whoever spares the rod hates his son, but he who loves him is diligent to discipline him. By the way, does it say that you use the rod all the time? What is the general point here?
It's diligently.
At all.
What's that?
Not using it at all. Because if you don't use it, then you're gonna have problems.
I think it is the rod is necessary, but it's also, the rod represents discipline in general. Because there's other ways to discipline, and we know that, but the rod must not be spared. Folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from him. Once again, I think these might be all Proverbs. I think so. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you strike him with a rod, he will not die. What does that tell us? This isn't abuse. If you strike him with a rod, you will save his soul from Sheol. The rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. Discipline your son, and he will give you rest. He will give you delight to your heart. This is one that's interesting to me. A child left to himself brings shame to his mother. What does that mean?
It breaks her heart.
Breaks your heart?
An undisciplined child can't train himself.
Who's this instruction to? Fathers. What happens, I'm going to pick an age, and some of you mothers might disagree with me, but what happens when your child starts turning 13, 14, I'd probably stop there, 15 if I had to keep going. What happens? Physically.
Often they're bigger than you.
Yeah. Remember before when they were 2, you can overpower them. When they're 13, 14, 15, that changes. And it changes quickly. But it does not change for the father. That doesn't happen until you guys turn 35.
And what's interesting, if they don't have respect for you when they're little, you can't talk to them when they're older. So if you spare, if you spare them when they're little, you miss your opportunity. They're not going to respect you. So you're not going to be spanking a 14-year-old,
Right.
But you're going to be talking to them, and they're going to say, I don't respect you.
Yeah, they'll laugh at you at 14, yeah. And there's a large contingent of that's on the mother, but I would say that the majority of that is on the father. They need a father who emulates how to treat women, how to treat their wives, how they ought to treat their mother. They need fathers that emulate that. And so I think there's a huge responsibility to fathers in that regard. Number 4, children's responsibilities. Obedience and honor. I was thinking about who the target audience is when they wrote this. You guys can help me with that a little bit, because it probably wasn't 2-year-olds. Exodus 20, honor your father and mother, that your days may be long in the land of the Lord. Your God is giving you. Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Colossians 3:20. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. What age, I'm asking you, what age do you think this starts to become an appropriate message for kids? Where they actually understand what you're saying is what I'm getting at.
I think the obedience is a little bit easier early. The idea of honoring, I think, as they age, you're looking at 11, 12, 13, as you were mentioning, that idea of like your behavior honors your parents
Yeah.
is better understood than
Yeah, I agree. The honoring requires a different level of cognitive understanding than just obedience because the obedience is, well, if I don't do what I should, pain will follow. And I mean, you don't have to be very old to learn that. Even dogs learn that. But dogs can't learn how to honor, so to say. Proverbs 1:8, hear, my son, your father's instruction, and forsake not your mother's teaching. Yeah.
I think obedience starts earlier, but ends at a certain point in time. Like Josh is probably now to the point where he's kind of in between. But honoring extends for the entirety of the rest of their lifetime.
Good point. I need to tell my dad that.
So you don't have to abandon the stuff with honor.
No, you're making a really good point. There's a persistent sense of honoring, and but what you're getting at is 2 shall become 1 and they shall leave the house. The obedience they need to now be set in their ways of their own obedience because they're starting their own life, and so you make a great point there. I still remember when Kayla was very young, we had just moved here, when it hit me, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I hit, oh, my dad didn't know what he was doing either. Maybe I ought to have a little grace for things that I look back on and say, oh, he didn't do that right, he didn't do this right. Maybe I ought to humble myself because, who better to give a child to than someone who's never done it before? Balanced parenting. Balanced parenting is understanding how much correction versus when you should do correction, all that kind of stuff. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. This is a very difficult verse. It's a very difficult verse. I have been angry, and I know that. And I'm sure if I were to go around the room, others who have been fathers have been angry. And it's really hard to not get angry at times. Very, very challenging for fathers.
Well, I didn't really look so much at that as anger, as I know as a kid, it would make me angry when the adults didn't practice what they preached.
Mm-hmm.
When they would set one example and then tell you to follow another, that would,
Yeah, and that just hit the hypocrisy, right?
because it says, do not provoke your children to anger. So I always took that, you try not to do things to make the kids angry.
Right.
Out of necessary.
Yep.
And to bring it back to the previous slide about honoring your father and mother, like, we should be, as parents, make it easier for them to obey and honor us. It's hard when you have parents that don't live godly lives and hypocritical lives, and still trying to hold to honor your father and mother. Like, what does that mean? That makes it really
Right.
hard. It makes it hard on the kid as an adult.
Yeah. So I want to come back to this. I'm just going to put them all out here. This is a hard one for me. Because once again, it seems like it's so, like, you just do the thing and they'll do the thing. It has that feel, and we know it's not true. We know it's not true. So it's like, okay, did I fail? So I really processed through this a lot. So I thought about the father of the parable of the prodigal son. Did the father of the prodigal son train his child in the way he should go? Did the prodigal son go in the way that he should go originally? What was it? How did the prodigal son know that he did not go in the right way?
Consequence.
Because what?
He hit rock bottom.
He hit rock bottom, but what came back to him? It was what was the right way. It was that understanding of, oh, I need to go return to that which I came from because that's where I learned these things. And so, as adults, those of you who have younger children, and some of you that have children that are already older, we all know that there are children that will grow up and they will not be Christians, or they will not live a Christian life, or they will choose a different path, if you will, even though you did everything you could, and you may not have been perfect. So the first thing I'd say is, this was going back to one of our previous lessons, allow yourself to be forgiven. Forgive yourself, because you're not perfect. You probably did make some mistakes, but that's okay. Number two, always let them know door is open. Don't condone or approve, but always let them know that the door is open, because you never know when that prodigal moment might come. And so Luke 15:18, this is where he says, this is the prodigal son, I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against the heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. He didn't get that from anywhere, from just existing. He got that from his father originally. And that's the point. We are all children of God. We're not going to have a lot of time. I was going to bring this back to, hey, how does this relate to us when we think about ourselves? We are children of God. He's our Father. when we don't disobey, what do you think he's thinking about us? And so we're gonna tie that in. You can get that in John 1, 12 or 13. But to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor the will of the man, but of God. We could even have gone to the children of Israel. What did they end up doing after he rescued them? They're getting upset with them. They're building golden calves. They're doing all these things that they shouldn't be doing, even though it was very clear that God gave them instruction on how they should live. I'm going to leave with this. This is one thing that's really kind of hit me recently. Do you want your children to become a Christian? And if I were to ask that question, most of you would just say, of course I do, yes. But let me rephrase it. Do you want your children to want to become Christian? Isn't that what's really more important? Because it doesn't matter what I think. It's not my faith. I want them to want the best for themselves. It's very different than just saying I want the best for them. I want you to want it, not me wanting it for you. And so that's the last thing. I had this Galatians 4, 1 through 7, and then we'll finish with a prayer. I mean that the heir, as long as he is a child, is no different from a slave, though he is the owner of everything, but in his under guardians and managers until the date set by his father. In the same way, we also, when we were children, were enslaved in the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. And because you are sons, God has sent the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So you are no longer a slave, but a son. And if a son, then an heir through God. So we'll close on that. Let me pray. I think I'm going to pray for the food as well, I believe, and then we'll eat. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you. We want to give you thanks, Lord. We want to thank you for being our Father. Lord, parenting is very difficult, and those of us who have been parents, who are parents, who will become parents, we just ask that you forgive us when we fall short, that we truly seek to raise our children to want you. We're so thankful for your Son. And at this time, Lord, we're also thankful for the food that we're about to eat, gather together, that we may have good conversations and just enjoy the day together as a family of your word. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thanks everyone.